Tantor Audio, a division of Recorded Books, presents 10 Days in Paradise, a novel, by Linda Abbott, narrated by Lisa Larsen. Sanibel Island, Fall 2005. The encounter that would unravel the staid fabric of David Blakemore's middle-aged life started innocently enough. Certainly it was ironic that this unexpected twist of fate occurred on the first day of his family's long-awaited vacation. In deference to an urgent plea from his wife, he'd gone on a mission to find a cache of beach toys for their children, Ethan, Emma, and Colin. Marianne wanted an immediate inventory, so she knew what to buy from the pricey tourist shops when she went into town. The fact that their children, ages 6, 4, and 2 years old, typically refused to go along with any adult-inspired recreational activity simply did not occur to her. His wife had an agenda, and today's agenda was the acquisition of a full set of brightly colored plastic pails, shovels, and castle shapes. The incandescent sunlight darkened as if on a dimmer switch as he entered the garage, a concrete structure supporting the large oceanfront condo building. He headed to the storage locker where the owners kept their beach paraphernalia. It was cool down here, and it felt good on his perspiring forehead. As he turned the corner into a narrow cinder-block hallway lit by a dingy light bulb, he was startled by the presence of another person. In the next second, he recognized her. It was the woman he'd seen at the pool this morning. He had first noticed her while playing with Ethan and Emma in the tropical lagoon-style pool. Alone in a sea of couples and families, oblivious to everyone around her, she wore a ruby-red swimsuit that fit like a leather glove on her slender figure. She had been reading a hardcover book, occasionally lifting her head to take in the postcard view, a glimmering ribbon of white sand beach under a dome of sapphire sky. The Paradise Resort and Spa certainly was everything the brochure promised and then some. Though he wasn't the kind of guy who made a habit of looking at other women, his gaze kept returning to her. There was no avoiding her in the dank corridor. She stood in front of the storage unit opposite his, turning the key in the rusty deadbolt lock, trying without success to unlock the door. Dressed simply in a pale yellow cotton shirt and denim shorts, there was nothing overtly provocative about her appearance. A cascade of sable-colored hair framed a delicate face, on which the most prominent feature were luminous hazel eyes. She was exceptionally pretty. He saw the glint of an emerald-cut diamond wedding ring on her left hand. Her voice, smooth like pancake syrup, interrupted his thoughts. "Excuse me," she said, still twisting the key. "Do you know if there is a trick to opening these doors? I'm not having any luck with this." "Here, let me try it," he said, moving toward her. She handed him the key, her fingers lightly brushing his, her proximity in equal measure intoxicating and overwhelming. Her hair carried the fresh scent of grapefruit, a scent that was clean and enticing, and reminded him of long-ago warm summer nights and the fervent ache of adolescence. His heartbeat quickened, and an unexpected blast of desire surged through him. He hoped this was not noticeable, and wondered what was behind the razor's-edge intensity of his reaction. Not enough sex? Was he losing it? Was this the start of a midlife crisis? Something that he had witnessed in some of his friends? Too much sun? "Thank you so much. If you can't get it, I'll just call the office. But I want to be sure because they already think I'm an idiot because I couldn't figure out how to work the bathtub," she said. "It was so embarrassing. Turns out you have to pull the knob instead of turning it." Glad for the task at hand, he carefully inserted the key into the deadbolt lock, slowly turned it, and then repeated the motion in the doorknob keyhole.
"Here you go. Problem solved."
She looked relieved and smiled at him, thrusting him deeper into his attraction to her. "You're a godsend. Thanks again for your help." His mind raced to find a way to prolong the encounter. Common sense told him to say, "You're welcome," and leave before he did something stupid. He was, after all, a happily married man, right? It seemed incomprehensible that a perfect stranger could have this visceral of an effect on him, that this day that had started so uneventfully had taken this unanticipated turn, that the seemingly innocuous task of finding pails and shovels for his children had put him in harm's way. It made him think of small towns and tornadoes that strike without warning in the middle of the night. She headed into the darkened, tomb-like storage room, and he seized the opportunity.
"Let me hold the door for you."
She slipped inside, deftly navigating the melange of beach toys, chairs, fishing poles, and assorted beach gear.
"So what is it you hope to find in here?"
he asked, peering into the dark space. "A bike. The people I'm renting from offer it with the condo." It was resting against the back wall of the cinder-block prison. She grabbed the handlebars, flipped up the kickstand, and wheeled out a woman's no-frills standard-issue bicycle. Large padded seat, thick tires, no handbrakes or gears, and a wire basket. "You have no idea of how relieved I am that you're here. I'm terribly claustrophobic. I can just imagine that door swinging shut and getting locked in there for days."
"A terrible way to spend a vacation at the beach,"
he joked, the flirtation in his voice effortless. The thought of her being afraid made him want to protect her.
"Have you been on the bike path yet?"
he asked. "This is my first day out. A couple of years ago, we came here on a day trip and rode all over the island. How about yourself?"
"Not yet. My kids are too young to ride, so I haven't been out yet."
His choice of the I pronoun instead of we came naturally. It was a good segue into the question he really wanted to ask. The mere fact that she was wearing a wedding ring didn't mean she was happily ever after married. Could be separated, or on her way to divorce. He took in a deep breath, shifting his weight from one leg to the other.
"Are you here with your family?"
"Actually, I'm here alone. A first for me. My husband and son, he's 15, are at home. I decided to take a vacation by myself. Actually, a much-needed break from raising a teenager. 15 is a delightful age," she said, a lilt of unmistakable sarcasm in her voice.
"Yes, so I've heard. My best friend's kids are teenagers, and they're giving him a run for his money. His solution is to drink heavily and play a lot of golf," he said.
She laughed. "How long are you going to be here?"
10 days. It's our first real vacation in a long time. We're having a family reunion to celebrate my parents' 50th wedding anniversary."
"What a great idea. Your parents must be so happy," she said, her eyes engulfing him.
If she weren't so damn beautiful, I could relax, he thought.
He caught himself as his eyes drifted to the curve of her breasts pressed against soft cotton.
You know, we're having a barbecue later this week. Very informal. You're welcome to join us. Does one get lonely taking a vacation alone?
I haven't been here long enough to answer that, she said. Again, that easy laugh like wind chimes on a breezy day. Thanks for the invitation. Who knows? Maybe our paths will cross again. Well, I'd better be going. Isn't this just the most incredible place? A final smile, and she turned and walked away with the bike. She was halfway across the parking lot when he realized that he didn't even get her name. David, will you take Ethan down to the pool to look for his Spider-Man sunglasses? I think he left them by the slide. Standing in the kitchen of their luxurious $3,000 a week oceanfront condo, Mary Ann spoke as she wiped her hands on a crumpled kitchen towel. Dressed in a forest green Nike t-shirt and khaki shorts, her long blonde tresses bound in a hastily arranged scrunchy ponytail, she had just finished making a snack for Colin, who insisted on Cheerios and marshmallows every day before his nap. His mother, as in all things with the children, was only too happy to oblige this ritual that she had created and assiduously nurtured. In the sumptuous living room, Emma pulled at the hem of her lilac sundress, oblivious to her new surroundings, happily watching a SpongeBob DVD. SpongeBob and Patrick were a big part of Emma's life these days. She too was scheduled for a nap, or at least some quiet time. High-strung by nature and given to tantrums, Emma needed her rest. The condo, immaculate when they had arrived, was now a cluttered swamp of children's toys, clothes, DVDs, and video games. Juice boxes and sippy cups were lined up on the glass coffee table, and Emma's twin bitty babies were sleeping on the leather sofa. The doll's pink diaper bag sat nearby, next to a fresh, juicy juice stain on the almond-colored carpet. Still unnerved from the garage encounter, David was only too happy to oblige his wife's request. He needed a few minutes to regain his composure.
Come on, Ethan, let's go find those sunglasses.
Ethan, wearing Spider-Man swim trunks and a Lord of the Rings t-shirt, played his negotiating card. Okay, but will you let me go down the slide?
Sure, pal. You can go down the slide as many times as you want.
The words were no sooner out of David's mouth when he realized his mistake. Like the Energizer Bunny with a new 9-volt battery, Emma was instantly activated. Daddy, take me to the slide too. I want to go down the slide too. Please, Daddy, please.
Emma, we'll go down the slide later, after you have your nappy.
The kids had been at the pool all morning. No, Daddy, I don't want my nappy. Daddy, please take me. I want to go down the slide. Will you take me? I want to go down the slide. Emma's near-platinum ringlet curls bounced in cadence with her words as she ran to her father, clinging to his leg, her slate-blue eyes fixed with determination. David didn't want this trip to look for sunglasses to turn into an hour of watching Emma go down the slide, especially when they were all going to dinner tonight, and Emma would turn into sleepwalker zombie child in the restaurant, which would in turn ruin his parents' dinner.
Look, Emma, I promise I'll take you later, but first you have to take your nappy.
Honey, Mary Ann intoned from the kitchen, why don't you just take her? She doesn't understand why Ethan gets to go and she doesn't. While she spoke, Colin decided he'd had enough of his snack, picked up his plastic Bob the Builder bowl, turned it upside down, and put it on his head, saying, "Ma, ma, ma, ma," in rising decibel intensity. A fountain of miniature marshmallows and Cheerios splashed onto his wispy blonde hair and shoulders, and then splattered on the floor. Mary Ann watched in quiet amusement and calmly picked up the bowl. "All done, sweetie?" she asked, taking him out of the high chair. David, used to doing Mary Ann's bidding where the children were concerned, for some reason didn't want to comply with any more of her demands today. He was also slightly annoyed to see the floor of their $3,000 a week condo covered with Cheerios and marshmallows. At least they were dry.
Let me explain it to her. Listen, Emma, you need your sleepy time, so tonight we can go out to a nice dinner with Grandma and Grandpa. And then later we'll go down the slide.
I want to go down the slide now. I don't want to take my nappy, Emma protested loudly. Eyes filling with tears, she started to cry. Mary Ann stood in the kitchen doorway, a look of reproach in her eyes. David knew the look well. This wasn't worth an argument.
All right, enough of this. Come on, let's go. Emma, you can go down the slide 3 times, And then it's back here for your nappy. Do you understand?
5 times, Daddy. I want to go down the slide 5 times, okay, Daddy? Emma asked, her tears having miraculously vanished. Frustrated and desperate to buy a ticket out of this confrontation, he agreed. Marianne handed him 2 beach towels and went to retrieve Emma's swimsuit. She'll be fine, Marianne said. And don't worry about your parents. They just need to relax more where the kids are concerned. David held his tongue. His parents' parenting methods and Marianne's were light years apart. But there was no sense getting into that now. After making sure she had a bottle of water, the bike lock, sunglasses, and the condo key, Ellen Bennett set out to explore the island. A whisper of ocean breeze felt like silk on her sun-warmed face. The bike path curved through a dense jungle of tropical trees, shrubs, and sprawling bouquets of fuchsia-colored bougainvillea. Riding away from the shore, a cathedral of Australian pines shaded the path, offering a respite from the afternoon sun that had warmed the day to a balmy 84 degrees. In a word, she thought, heavenly. She remembered her trip to Sanibel several years earlier. She and Jeremy and Andrew had rented bicycles and had ridden all over the island. They watched dolphins swimming, marveled at the plethora of shells on the beach, and stuffed their pockets until they were full of gems. They stopped at a rustic bar and grill and had fried grouper sandwiches for lunch. It was a golden memory, now tucked into one of her meticulously organized vacation scrapbooks. Had it only been 3 years ago that they had been so happy? She pushed the thought aside. None of that mattered now. This was her day. It was as if the good Lord had smiled on her and given her a gift. She pedaled, breathed deeply, and happily realized she had not felt this exuberant in a long time. She was free, her liberation a long time coming. The bike path led westward, toward Sunset Beach. Across the street stood a magnificent row of beachfront condos, one more opulent than the next, properties that commanded the kinds of prices only the very wealthy could afford. Private property signs staked out in lovely flower beds warned the uninvited to stay out. A shiny black Jaguar, driven by an elegant-looking older woman, silently passed her and turned into one of the gated entrances. Ellen pondered the realities of such a lifestyle. Was it as wonderful as it looked from the outside, living in a $1 million oceanfront condo, flying first class, going to spas and dining in 5-star restaurants? Did the haves of Sanibel and elsewhere, born into wealth and privilege, realize their good fortune? Or were their lives mired in the same unpleasant realities of the human condition that faced people regardless of income level? Ellen understood that she led a life that by many would be viewed as privileged, and perhaps the same questions could be asked of her. True, she was here off-season when the prices bore some resemblance to sanity. But there were plenty of poor souls on the planet who would never visit a place like this, or even know it existed. Yet she envied the people who owned a slice of this paradise, not so much for their money, but for their proximity to the ocean, which in recent years had become her passion. The soothing rhythm of the gentle surf, boundless cerulean skies, and perpetual ballet of shorebirds dancing at the water's edge. It was the one place she could walk and pray and actually feel her connection to all of creation. It was the pull of the ocean that had brought her here. At least that's what she had told everyone. What she had not revealed, and what most people would have difficulty believing, was that her picture-perfect life was coming apart at the seams. Her husband was mired in a depression from which he couldn't seem to escape, and their relationship with Andrew had deteriorated into an endless series of confrontations that destroyed the harmony they once took for granted. Ever since Andrew hit the teenage years, He'd been on a pedal-to-the-metal collision course with trouble. At home, at school, and most recently with his high school basketball team. His grades were suffering, and teachers complained that he wasn't engaged in the classroom. Ellen and Jeremy didn't like what they saw, but had no idea how to stop it. It hadn't been this way with Stephen, Jeremy's son from his first marriage, who was 14 when they got married. Remarkably, Stephen defied the conventional wisdom that a child of divorce could certainly be expected to test the limits of parental and academic discipline. Stephen had cruised through high school with a 4.0 grade point average, graduated magna cum laude from Dartmouth, and now held a lucrative job as an investment banker in London, where he lived with his girlfriend and an extremely indulged bichon frisé. Stephen's success only amplified Andrew's struggles and made Ellen feel like a failure as a mother. Once treasured, the relationship she had with her 15-year-old son was now in tatters. Right now, the only thing that interested Andrew was skateboarding, heavy metal bands, and hot girls. He was angry a lot, and she was the recipient of much of his rage. She told herself this was normal adolescent behavior that would pass. Jeremy was very much an advocate of this theory. But after a while, she began to seriously doubt its validity and came to see it as an excuse for deplorable behavior. No matter what she did, no matter how hard she tried to avoid conflict, the arguments were frequent and awful. She didn't understand how all the love she had poured into him could have produced this contempt for her, and she didn't know how to fix it. The reality of their stormy relationship was at times unbearable, and that, in a nutshell, is why she was here. "Shut the fuck up," he had hissed at her from across the dinner table one night, his disrespect chilling her to the bone. This particular night, the remark was so uncalled for, so out of line, that she left the dinner table and cried for an hour in bed. After she pulled herself together, she spent the next 2 hours online, finding her escape in a plane ticket to Florida and an oceanfront condo rental. It was ironic that Andrew's tirades had unwittingly given her the determination to embark on this adventure. Justice prevails. The bike path turned into the business district, taking her past quaint shops and food vendors with names like Norm's Old-Fashioned Hot Dogs. Suddenly, running toward her was a deeply tanned and fit 30-something guy who looked like he ran every day, which brought to mind the man in the garage, whose GQ looks and personal charisma had registered a 6.0 on the Encounters with Strangers Richter scale. She didn't know his name, but surely she would see him again at Paradise. And he did invite her to the barbecue, which had surprised her. She couldn't imagine showing up and meeting his family. "Hi, I'm the married woman vacationing alone down the way." She'd be as welcome as a child with strep throat at a daycare center. Was he merely being kind to invite her? Or perhaps he was nervous? Or could it be that he found her attractive? Now the path cut through a thick jungle of foliage. As she pedaled through the tunnel of greenery, she felt a tiny prick of anxiety. Alone in this beautiful place, she suddenly felt vulnerable to forces she did not fully understand. An hour later, Ellen turned into the public beach access parking lot. It was 6:30, 15 minutes until sunset, an event celebrated by islanders with the kind of reverence once bestowed on ancient pagan rituals. She fished the bike lock from her beach bag and wove it through the spokes of the wheels and then onto the steel rack. She grabbed her camera. A well-trodden wooden bridge, beaten by the sun and in dire need of a coat of stain, led to the beach. No parking signs were posted everywhere, leaving her to wonder what people did with their cars here. A group of beachgoers wearing sun visors and clutching digital cameras had gathered along the shore, determined to capture the mystical moment when the ball of sun vanished into the horizon. Some sat on blankets with picnic baskets and bottles of wine. Ellen kept walking to find a wide-open shot and uninhabited photo of what was to come. Then she waited. Over the next few minutes, the heavens erupted. A fiery blitzkrieg of scarlet, violet, and amber illumined and electrified the pewter canvas of endless sky. Squadrons of pelicans flew over cobalt-darkened waters more ominous than inviting in the fading light. Shorebirds flitted to and fro in a prism of golden light on velvet sand. Over the years, Ellen had taken hundreds of pictures at sunset, transfixed by the subliminal show of nature. It was not uncommon for her to stand in awe until the very last speck of daylight had disappeared. She had seen sunsets so breathtakingly beautiful that a more powerful argument for God could not be made. Standing there, she was overcome by a sense of joy and exhilaration. The white sand beach, as wide as an expressway, stretched for miles in both directions. Off in the distance, she could see more than a dozen people standing in a tight circle at the water's edge. Curious, she started to move toward them. Squinting against the sun's dying light, she was surprised to see that they were in formal attire, men in dark suits and women in little black cocktail dresses and heels, the latter being no small feat on the sand. Puzzled, she scanned the crowd. In their midst, two people, a bride and groom. Stunningly beautiful, the bride wore an ivory satin tea-length dress with a plunging back that showed off her tan, her hair done in an elegant chignon seemingly impervious to ocean breezes. The groom had that just graduated from Harvard law look to him, the kind of young man that every mother wants for her daughter and seldom gets. Set back about 100 yards from the beach stood an enormous stone building, banked with floor-to-ceiling Gothic windows that framed the magnificent ocean view. A small group of casually dressed older women stood at a respectful distance watching the oceanside nuptials. Ellen joined them, exchanging knowing smiles with the women, who looked to be mostly in their 60s. "It's so romantic," one of them said quietly, her eyes hidden behind turquoise-colored Dior sunglasses. In her hand was a mesh bag stuffed with seashells. "Brings back memories, doesn't it?" said another. "Yes," said Ellen, nodding in agreement. The bride's eyes, brimming with loving adoration, were fixed on the groom's as he slipped the ring on her finger. It was a lovely moment, and the women breathed it in deeply, wanting to savor it and carry it home like the shells in their bags. Etched in the fine lines of their 60-something faces was a wistful nostalgia, a longing for days past, and, Ellen imagined, indelible memories of first loves. The years had passed, but desire had not, its smoldering embers rekindled by this storybook bride and groom. Age robs women of many things: their looks, their children, the firmness of their flesh. But the one thing that age does not rob women of is this enduring desire for romantic love. It was something that Ellen herself had not comprehended as a younger woman. But at 45, she understood it well. A large flock of herring gulls circled overhead. The bride and groom exchanged their wedding vows and kissed after the minister pronounced them man and wife.
"I don't know why anyone would want to live on an island," George grumbled, his rugged looks and working-class demeanor an unorthodox match for the Laura Ashley floral print chair on which he sat, across the room from his wife of 50 years. There's only one road in and one road out. And people pay $1 million.
Sample complete. Ready to continue?